sharing again. Let's try that again. Just share my entire screen this time. Okay, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, so we can all see the agenda, the big pink love heart.
Perfect.
Excellent. Okay, keep going, May.
Perfect. All right, so obviously welcome everyone, and we will be just doing some quick introductions as well, and then just quickly setting the scene, giving you some context and background, getting us all on the same page. We'll then be introducing planning for success, as well as the 5 steps for project management. And then, being conscious of time, we will be going through 2 specific steps of those 5 steps, which are scoping and planning in a little bit more detail. And then we're going to be providing you with lots of resources that hopefully will help you in your planning endeavours. And we'll be giving these links throughout the presentation as well, just in the chat. And then at the end, you'll also have access to these slides. So those links will also be there as well. So yes, we will be recording this. So that's if there's any contribution throughout the microphone with the microphones, but also in the chat as well. So just be conscious of what you are typing into the chat. I think most of you have already, but just keep your microphones muted. And if you do have any questions throughout the presentation or ideas you'd like to share, feel free to pop them in the chat. But we will also be having specific opportunities for question asking as well. Perfect. Okay, so who is this session for? Well, good news, if you are here, then this session is for you. So this session is created for people who have less experience in planning, or perhaps more experience in planning. Doesn't really matter. It's for hopefully there is something that you can take away from this presentation, and also for regardless of what position you have in your Rotaract club and how long you've been with Rotaract as well. So if everyone could just quickly introduce themselves in the chat, you can just write your name, what Rotaract club you're from, and where in the world you are. Most of us in Australia, but I know some people from other countries joining us as well, and perhaps what you would like to gain from this presentation. So just quickly popping that into the chat would be fantastic. And we all good there, Claire?
Yeah, I've lost what I'm sharing. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to, this is going so well. I'm just going to stop presenting and start presenting again. So I tried to hide the screen so that I could see all your lovely faces, and then it disappeared. So that went well. Here we go. Okay. Can we see the slides again, May?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So yeah, first question was, I am experienced in planning and conducting projects. So as you introduce yourself, maybe give yourself a star rating, and then May can let me know whether we've got a lot of 1s or a lot of 3s or 4s or a lot of 5s. I would probably say that I am a 4. You're going to hear a little bit more about some of the experience I've had in this space, but there's always room to improve. But let's move on to what makes a great project. And May, feel free to interrupt me once we've got some responses in the chat.
Will do.
So so let's first make some definitions. A project. What is a project? So it's a temporary or short-term endeavor designed to create a unique product, service, or result. So in the big pink box there, here are some projects that exist in our Rotary district or Rotaract district. And for example, a trivia night or a games night is a project, but just taking minutes at a meeting is not a project. That'd be more of a task. So some of the projects listed here, the people to the left planting trees is our district tree planting project. The lovely ladies dressed up in the Harry Potter gear is from a project our club did. It was an experiential event called Night at Hogsmeade. And then there's another project in our district supporting people from the Carteret Islands who are climate change refugees and are currently relocating to the mainland of Papua New Guinea. I bring those examples up because they are projects that we will reference later in the presentation. And underneath that are 3 projects that became programs, and they're not really projects anymore because they're ongoing, they run year to year, and they've moved beyond project status. So Rotaract used to be a program of Rotary, and it's not anymore, but Rotary Youth Exchange still is. We know that there are lots of projects that work towards the End Polio Now program, And then ROMAC is just another example of a Rotary program that you might hear about. And then when we say good projects, well, what does good mean? Good for whom? What does it look like and feel like? And what are the inputs and the outputs? And this is another opportunity for you guys to share in the chat what you think makes a good project. But when we've asked people these questions before, the process parts that come up that make a good project is that it meets a community need, that it feels well managed and well planned, that it has an adequate budget, that it's delivered on time. And then the outcomes that a lot of people talk about is that it engages the whole club, it feels enjoyable and worthwhile, that it can be sustained year in, year out, or to do it again, and it doesn't cause any harm, because that would make a really great project if it wasn't harmful at all. May, do we have any contributions in the chat?
Yeah, so I'm seeing quite a lot of 2s and 3s. So no one who's very strongly agreeing or strongly disagreeing, but perhaps more people that are, let's say, yeah, around 2 or 3.
Awesome. So that means maybe we've got a little bit of experience, but we're looking to take the next step, and that is perfect. And hopefully we can provide lots of resources for you guys today that you can use on your next steps for project management and planning. So a little bit of context when it comes to project planning. Today we heard about club constitutions and bylaws, and then you might also have some other documents that work towards how your club operates. Beck shared earlier the importance of strategic planning. So then every year you might take one section of your strategic plan and make that your annual plan. From there, you might have action plans about how you want to make those strategies come to life. And then from there, you have project plans. And the project plans, there's a big spectrum of planning going on. The project plans are what we're talking about today. And there's also a project planning cycle, which can look very different depending on the type of project planning that you're doing. The one on the left actually comes from an education perspective, because I am a teacher. I really like how it starts. I always read it as starting with that yellow section of prepare, like just work out what you're doing, then plan it, then do it, move around the circle. But if you look at the blue section there, prioritize, it's really important before we even get started to determine the, spelling there's a bit odd, but determine the essentials of what we're going to do. And that's the step that I'm really going to focus on in a few moments, the pre-planning. On the other side of the slide is, because I'm a STEM teacher, is the STEM or the engineering design process. And this one's kind of kidified that we would use for primary school students. But again, similar to that prioritize step, it has an ask step. We have to ask questions and find out before you start imagining and jumping in with your ideas and planning and creating and then improving as you go through the cycle. So I'm going to show you another cycle in a moment that follows the same kind of idea. But you can see that depending on the context, we're all talking about the same sort of general process, and there's always about 5 steps. So let me introduce you to what we call planning for success. And you can see in the diagram here that it is a 5-step process with lots of sort of like feedback loops. And where planning for success came from is that it's a suite of documents that was created by myself and my Rotary mentor, Pat Armstrong, as part of our work on our district's Sustainable Communities Committee. So we just heard about how now Rotaractors are encouraged to be part of district committees. I've been a part of this committee for quite some time, and this is a really good example of what happens when Rotaractors and Rotarians collaborate. So this specific planning for success set of planning tools came from when Rotary International President Ian Risling challenged everyone to go and plant trees so that we can plant 1.2 million trees a couple of years ago. And when people Googled True Project Rotary, they found our little district project. And we started getting a lot of requests for the documentation behind our project and how we did it. And the more we shared it, the more we realized that just general documentation examples were needed out there in the Rotary space. So we designed Planning for Success to help people to plan their own projects in their clubs and districts, to really follow all the things we knew about best practice with a specific focus on sustainability. And so the Planning for Success resources are available on our website, which May's going to drop a link to in the chat. So this is our homepage, and then this is what the page looks like. So essentially it's the guide with all of the chapter headings here, and then a whole bunch of supporting documentation. These are all links that you can download for lots of templates and worked examples that you can use at the different stages of project planning. So May, what are those 5 steps?
Did not unmute myself. Okay, perfect. So the first step of project management, we've got scoping. So that is when you are asking yourself, what shall we do? What is worthwhile doing? What issue are we going to be tackling? And how are we making sure that this is actually something worthwhile? And by the end of this step, you should have a solid grasp of what your project is and have an outline of your project formed as well. And then step number 2 is when you are doing your planning. So this is, now that you know what your project is, you're going to be looking at how you're going to ensure that they actually run smoothly and creating a detailed plan for that. So these first 2 steps are what we're going to be primarily focusing on, but just for some context, we'll outline the other steps as well. So step number 3 is implementing, when you're actually carrying out that plan. Step number 4, monitoring and evaluating. So checking that that plan is working, constantly reflecting. And step number 5 is sustaining. So making it better for the long term.
Awesome. So now we have another poll, May.
Yep. So if you could just pop into the chat your response to this poll question number 2. So which of these 5 steps do you not feel your club does well? That you feel your club does well and not so well. So for example, if you could put a T for what you think your club does well, your top, and then B for bottom, so what your club doesn't do so well. So maybe your club's really good at planning, but maybe not so much on reflecting on your planning.
Yeah, so I put my example there. I think our club of Monash Rotaract, I'm a member for 10 years now. I think we're really good at the doing. We're really good at like rallying on the day, getting an event done, and pretty good at monitoring and evaluating. But then afterwards, we tend not to take those lessons into the next project that we do. And also we tend to do a lot of one-off projects. And so I would say that we're not super great at the sustaining step.
Yeah, so if we could just have a T for top and B for bottom, just because numbers, just seeing the numbers aren't really clear about what you're referring to. Interesting. Yeah, so seeing just a lot of range of responses at the moment. So different clubs all have their different strengths and weaknesses.
Awesome. Okay, and I'm not sure if it's too early for questions, but this is the time for questions. And I've put another one of these question slides in because I have a habit of just going for it and just going into lecture mode, essentially, and when I give this talk. And I want to make sure we always have time for questions. So as May said at the start, feel free to post them in at any time. And then when the hammer comes back up, that's when we might address them. So for now, we'll move on to steps 1 and 2 in more detail. So they were scoping and planning. May, I'm interested to see if anyone said that scoping or planning was their club's strength.
Yeah, so we've got so scoping as number 1 and planning as number 2. We've got Taylor said planning, so scoping, Ron, scoping. Yeah, we've actually got quite a few. I think we've got scoping as the top one.
Awesome. Okay. So yeah, for now, next couple minutes, we're going to focus on scoping and planning. So step 1, scoping. Just a little bit of time check with the clock there in the corner. I think we're going pretty good. All right. So scoping is when you take your problem, represented here by stinky socks, a problem that you've identified in the community. It's a need that you know that is out there, and you turn it into thinking and some ideas about what projects your club could pursue and how you could make an impact in regards to that problem. So from stinky socks to thoughts. And before we dive straight in, well, as I said, I've done this Planning for Success presentation many times now, and the more I hear about what other people are doing in this space, the more I like what I hear. And I wish that we could all come together and make one master sort of document of best practice, because even though that's what we tried to do for Planning for Success, that's a couple of years old now, and I've heard a lot more interesting ideas since then that I would want to incorporate. So it's time to sort of collectively improve the way that we pursue projects and really focus on, as I highlighted earlier, that prioritize and ask step of the pre-planning process, which falls into scoping. So I'd like to see projects where we identify a problem that your members feel passionate about. We do some research and consultation, and then we propose specific project ideas, which we could call as a solution. I don't think Rotaractors are brave enough to say we're going to completely solve the problem, but a part of the problem we think we can help address that's needed and that suits your club's capabilities. And some really great further information about identifying the problems and working out what the gaps are and how your club can start to fill those gaps. I've linked a resource in this pink box here, which is a webinar that Ishwa, another DRR this year, from Western Australia, and I collaborated on early in the year, and it will be the webinar will be available on the Rotaract Australia website by the time we send out these slides after this weekend's training. He did some work with a peace project in the United States that really focused on this idea of identifying a problem and finding more information about it, and then identifying the gap that Rotaract could help fill. And I can't really talk to that because he was privileged enough to be able to share those resources sort of outside of America and outside of that program. But if you want more information, I suggest checking up that resource there. And the project that came out of it was a walkathon with school students, and they were walking for peace, and it had a really great connection to the things that they had learnt about at school. So if we're going to put the community first, let's consider the community considerations in the scoping step. So if we're thinking about any kind of project we want to do, what community are we hoping to help? What community is involved? And have we contacted them? Have we found out more information about the problem in that community? And have we considered partnering with that community? What does that community want out of the project? And how are they going to measure their success? And what risks does our project idea pose to them? So the general kind of process I'd really like to see clubs and districts follow here is to choose an issue that is identified by the community itself. So they recognize that it is an issue. So for example, the climate change refugee, the Carteret Island project I referenced earlier, that was a community that a Rotarian involved in our committee found out about. I think they heard about it in the news. They reached out to them and said, what do you need? We had ideas about what we thought that they would need. We knew that short term, they would need help in their transfer to the mainland. And then it became really clear that actually what they needed, so a short-term solution, for example, was that they needed life jackets to help make that transition because they were spending a lot more time en route on the oceans. Then it became clear actually they needed help was from engineers to help them work out what the best toilets were to build on the mainland once they started setting up their establishment. And then after that became specific needs at their medical centre. So we asked them what they needed. And the way to do that is to conduct research within the community and do a community needs assessment, which I'll talk more about in a moment. And there are lots of resources available from Rotary International to help you do that. As I was talking about before, Ishwa did a lot of work about identifying a problem, creating a problem statement, and then identifying gaps and proposing projects that address those gaps. The whole process involves a lot of consultation and feedback, and we can include sustainable practices to maximize the impact for the community. So let's talk about community needs assessments. A really good phrase here is nothing about us without us. So if we are aiming to help a community, even if that is a community, just the Australian public, maybe we want to do a mental health project, right? We want to know what has already been done in that space, what has already been identified and how people are feeling about it. So a community needs assessment is a systematic and transparent consultation process, identifying and prioritizing the needs of a community in order to inform programs, policies, projects that aim to address those needs. As I mentioned before, Rotary International has a guide to finding primary information. Again, I'm a school teacher. We talk about primary sources versus secondary sources. So it's really great to be able to specifically ask members of that community that you're trying to help. But if you can't do that, maybe particularly for an Australian project, like I said, mental health, you could use secondary sources such as reports, census data, or reports that are issued by other non-government organisations. So for example, a mental health project might be informed by data that was collected by Beyond Blue. So we really want to make sure that when we think we're addressing a need in a community, that it's coming from an informed place. And then when it comes to sustainable practices, there's 5 listed here. Start with the community, encourage local ownership, provide training, buy local, and find local funding. if we use our example from the Carteret Islanders and their medical centre, they identified that specifically they needed hospital beds. In Victoria, we have a Rotary project or program called Donations in Kind, it's a big warehouse in Footscray, where people can donate secondhand goods that they think will be useful to communities overseas. And there's all sorts of things in there. School equipment, I think there was a playground once, clothing, books, and they also have hospital beds. So initially our project plan was to collect hospital beds at Donations in Kind and then ship them to Papua New Guinea and then try and get them onto the Carteret, the smaller island off the coast of Papua New Guinea where the Carteret Islanders are moving. But that presented a lot of challenges, but it also isn't particularly sustainable because we could get local labourers to build the beds, then they would know how to work, how they work, and they would know how to fix them or replicate them quickly if needed. That meant that we could buy local materials and be putting money back into the local economy. And so that hits several of these sustainable practices in terms of upskilling the workers to make and repair the beds. They feel like they own them because they made them, and we've put money into the local economy. And then if we want to think about the risks that we might be posing to a recipient community, think of projects in the past where we might have sent things overseas. For example, the hospital beds. If the hospital beds get lost or they break and they can't be repaired, we've created rubbish. And I think the worst case scenario, just reflecting on that branding presentation we had earlier, would be to find rubbish, litter, but also rubbish in the environment that is harming the environment that had the Rotary logo on it. So there is one of the principles of sustainable development is the precautionary principle. Don't do it if you're not sure. So that's where our detailed planning comes into place. But we want to make sure that we are not going to lose natural human capital. No one's going to be harmed or damaged from our project. A triple bottom line is that it's got to be good for people, planet, and profit. That it doesn't benefit one generation over another generation, so that's intergenerational equality. Or if it comes to giving things to another community, that it's an equal opportunity and it doesn't create conflict within the community. If you are wishing to help a community and there are sort of smaller subsections in that community and it looks like you're only helping one part of the community, it could stir up some ill feelings. How come they're getting help and we're not? So you want to make sure that you understand the community you want to work with well enough to avoid those potential pitfalls. And again, there's a lot more information and sort of like explanation on each of these in the Planning for Success documentation. So if you see any ideas here, like, oh, I'd like to know more about that, or I don't quite get that, that's where you can go to get more information. And then we think about club considerations, because a project is both for a recipient community, but it's also something that our club and our members are going to be spending their time on. So thinking about where this project came from, do your members want to do it? Can your club handle it right now? What value does it offer your club and your members? Is it something that where Rotaract is providing unique value because we're a youth organisation, because we're a volunteer organisation, because we're connected to Rotary, because we're in the local community? That can mean lots of different things. And again, what risks does it pose to our particular members? So here we want to choose an issue or a cause that feels relevant to our members. And there's a lot of relationship building. So as we conduct our research, we can reach out and expand our networks and share the Rotaract brand and what we're about with other non-government organisations, other community groups, and start to build relationships that could last a really long time. As we work in our individual clubs or in our committees, we want to set team essential agreements so we all know how we're going to be working with each other. We can do some brainstorming. I'll talk about that in a moment. We can do a quick project assessment, which is one of the tools that came out of Planning for Success. If we're going to draft project goals, measures, and timelines, we should be doing it together to build capacity within our club. And again, build relationships as we consult with key stakeholders. So for example, that Harry Potter event that I showed you earlier, that was in support of Ovarian Cancer Australia. It came from one of our members having a personal experience with a friend who had ovarian cancer, so it was definitely relevant. We built a relationship with the representatives from Ovarian Cancer Australia, through them coming to do presentations, lots of emails backwards and forwards, and it's now a cause that our members feel informed about. So they were interested in learning more about it, and we've created this really good contact, and we might potentially work with that group again in the future. And now they know more about Rotary and Rotaract because they weren't previously aware that we existed. And sustainability comes back here again. This afternoon, there'll be a presentation by Ada about essentially preventing burnout as Rotaractors. And if you look at this, the triple bottom line approach, or this three kind of pronged idea to sustainability, there's economic, you don't want to run out of money; environmental, that's all the green things; but there's also social sustainability, sustaining your club over time, making sure you don't run out of members, that members don't burn out, but that you maintain the training, the knowledge base, and the club culture as your club progresses. So when we choose projects, we want projects that start with our members, encourage members of the club to feel like they own the projects and they are part of it. We want projects that upskill our members, that connect to our local community where our members are from, and that we feel like we've made a real difference. Some examples here would be that if you incorporate newer members into the process, that then you're upskilling and maintaining the skill level in your club, you're strengthening your club's connections to the local community. And if you follow these things, we won't be choosing a project that doesn't meet what your club's able to do right now. So there are lots of different types of projects. They can fall into one of four categories, and you might think about which one of these categories really suits your club, or which one is the default for your club. Are you an awareness raising club? Are you a service club where you go hands-on, do things? Are you an advocacy club, or do you have a lot of people who would like to advocate for certain causes in the club? Or do you tend to do a lot of philanthropy, which is where we donate money? So which one best suits the problem that you've identified, what your club's resources are right now in terms of everyone's availability and time and the skills that they have, and what Rotaract can offer in general as well. I really like an example from the Social Impact Network Rotary Club that Beck, who spoke earlier, is from. Earlier this year, while a lot of people were giving money to bushfire relief funds, her club had to think about how, as young professionals, collectively, they didn't have a lot of money, but they looked at another way that they could create value. So they heard that although there was a lot of news in the media about donation collection points not needing more household items and clothing, there was a chain of op shops that was near where many of their members were based that were still calling out for donations. So they decided to collectively engage their social networks, encourage people to go to op shops, donate items, but also buy items in the store and support the bushfire relief in that way. So it was a different way that Rotaract, a youth organisation, could add value rather than just giving money. And then what they did to be able to show that it was valuable is that they estimated how much they thought had been donated by their members. So if every member dropped off a bag and that bag was worth $20 resale value, how many bags did they drop off? And they could work out how much money they had essentially raised or given to those op shops. And then once we've maybe identified a problem or a cause that we would like to work towards, it's time to think of some project ideas. What's the way that we're actively going to help address this problem? And through this process, you can follow IDEA, and I've added S as well. IDEA, credit due, comes from Jake Leopold, who is a member of our Rotaract Club and our district, and I've added the S. So I really like this process because it is a structured brainstorming process that allows different strengths to show at different points. And it really helps our club in particular to create really creative project ideas, even if we feel like at the time we don't have the resources to pull them off. So in IDEA, you just throw out ideas and there's no rejection of anything. It all stays on the board. It can be completely insane, pie in the sky ideas. Then you give every single idea its own chance by just trying to elaborate on it a little bit and having a discussion about what that actually might look like. And it's not until the evaluation stage that you start to bring in some judgment and some prudence and critically analyze the different ideas. You can consider them under the filters of need. Does it meet the need that we've identified, or does it connect to the need? Does it meet with our members' passions? Does it meet with our members' skills? And you can consider sustainability considerations as well. And then you choose which projects you want to act on, choose, plan, and delegate. And I think it's really important to save the records from your whole process, even the ideas from the ideate stage that didn't make the cut in the evaluation stage, because you might come back to them later. So, as I said, planning for success is just a whole bunch of tools, and ideas is one of them. And another tool that I wanted to show you is called the quick project assessment. So this is really great if, for example, at the end of a ideas brainstorm, or a new member or someone in your club comes and brings you a project idea and you're not sure if it's a good fit, or maybe you can tell it's not quite right, but you don't know how to explain that, you can use this resource. So I'm going to, there you go. I did forget to say it, May. I'm glad I put that little box in. That the ideas brainstorming sessions really do help if you consider your strengths, which we identified earlier this morning, how they might help and hinder you in the process. I remember when one of my strengths in my top 5 was judgment, I really struggled in the ideate stage to not jump in and judge the ideas, whereas other people who are really honest or are quite optimistic might be really strong in that phase. But let's have a look at the quick ideas assessment. I'm going to stop sharing and then reshare my entire screen and then bring up the document. I think that's the best way to do it. There we go. All right, May, can you see the planning for success document?
Yep.
Yeah, awesome. So you put a little bit of detail about the project in the top, and then essentially someone's come to your club, they've given an idea. Maybe they say, I really want to do like an amazing race style event. And you go, okay, are our clubs as our club members interested? Do we have the experience? Do we have the time? Do we have the money? Is it something that would help us, or that would we need to attract sponsorship? Does it fit with an area of focus? Is it something that we have consulted the target community about? I just gave you a project idea, but I didn't start with a community in need, so it probably wouldn't score very well there. Is it needed? I imagine an amazing race style project would perhaps create awareness. It might raise money. And what are the benefits going to be? And is it potentially sustainable over time? And what I like about this document is that you can change any of those statements to suit what your club is all about. So the Rotary 6 area of focus might not be a big focus for your club, so you could get rid of that. But instead you might put in that your club at the moment is in a membership phase where you really need a lot more new members, or you really need to retain the members that you do have because you've just noticed a bit of a trend. So you might put the criteria here that any projects that get considered in your club over the next 6 months need to have a membership component. So in some way they could potentially benefit your club membership wise. So it could be because you're reaching out into networks that you've not previously connected with or shared the Rotaract story with. Or it could be another focus you have in your club. This one says sustainable over time, but I know in Monash Rotaract we made one of the values of our club this year environmental sustainability. So we perhaps put that there as an extra check to see if this project is working. As you score the project idea based on each of these, right? If it's less than 35, that's just based on how many there are. So out of 50, if it's less than 35, it's probably not a good project idea. You could change that criteria as well if you wanted to. So I think this is just a really quick tool. I've been trying to work out how to digitize it. If anyone has an idea how to digitize this, please let me know. I think this is a really good tool to help people quickly assess whether projects are right for them. All right, May, can you see the slides again now?
Yep, and just letting people know that the link to that template is also in the chat as well if you wanted to.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, we're going to provide the links in the slides and you'll be able to get them when there's the recordings, but I know that can take a little while, so I wanted to send the links out straight away. As you move out of the scoping step, a really good last check, this is also a really good club activity to do at a meeting as you come to the end of planning a certain type of project, is an elevator pitch. So there's a general idea that in the corporate kind of world that let's say you walked into the elevator with the CEO of a company and you want to work for them, or you have an idea and you want them to fund your startup. You get into the elevator with them at the bottom of the skyscraper. By the time you get to the top, you have this amazing elevator pitch that's going to convince them that your idea is awesome and that they should do what you want them to do. And a good pitch gives a clear articulation of the problem, the solution that you're proposing, the value it offers, and what you want them to do. And there's a video clip here that you can have a look at in your own time, but it's a really great way of making sure that everyone in your club is on the same page about what the project is about. And if you struggle to write the elevator pitch, it perhaps means that one part of your project hasn't been defined enough. So it's also a really good test to take forwards. And it can just be a really fun club meeting activity for different people to write pitches and kind of like compete and take the elements of the best ones. And then everyone's got a tool. If they ever happen to get in an elevator or a corridor, maybe with the district governor or somebody from another nonprofit organization who could really help your project, that they feel armed and equipped to really give the best sales pitch they can about your project and why it's awesome. So that's another tool that you can take away. Here's an example of one. I'm not going to go through it for the benefits of time. This is about the tree project I talked about earlier. You can see how I tried to color code it. This one's actually a little bit long, so it's always better if they're short and pithy, and these will be in the slides for you to read back over later. All right, now we go from scoping to planning. We take all of those ideas and we turn them into documentation, which that we will then implement later. Oh, the documentation. So in the boxes here is just an example of a few of the types of plans that you might create in the planning phase. More or less detail is required depending on the logistics and the scope of the project. And at the end of this step, you end up with a project proposal document, which has all the information that somebody would need in your club or a key stakeholder to be able to approve the project for you to then go and implement it. And again, we have resources connect to all of these different plans. For example, we have templates, which are blank ones you can use yourself, worked examples, which are ones that have already been filled out. And then we go to lots of different plans. You use the information that you already decided upon about your project, so what the problem was, what your solution is going to be, and what your strategies are for solving those problems, to complete a project plan that includes strategic elements, so your missions and your values that you might pull from your club's strategic plan. And the goals, they might also come from your strategic plan. And then the strategies, and hopefully your projects fall under some of the strategies. And then the action plan is when you take the strategies and you pair them up with actions. So to put this document into practice, you need to make a few decisions. The goals of your project, how you're going to achieve those goals. You need to set the measures. So we start to put some numbers on them. If we talk about the district tree project, how many seedlings are we going to plant? How many volunteers do we want to come? And how many different Rotary clubs would we like to be involved? There's some of our measures. Milestones are about time. At what time of the year are we going to do this? At what time of the year are we going to do that? Budget is about money. And then actions are assigned to specific people. I'm now going to open up this document here, which is a giant Excel spreadsheet that is full of worked examples and templates for a lot of those different plans that we talked about earlier. So again, I learned something new this morning. I wasn't sure if in the Elevate Rotaract changes, Rotaractors would be eligible for global grants. And I was really glad that Andrew clarified that this morning, because all of the documentation that was created for Planning for Success uses the same language required for a global grants application. And previously I only needed to tell Rotarians that. But now that Rotaractors can also apply for these grants, it's really good to know, because the way the global grants process works is when you get to finally filling out the application, some of you might have seen these when you've done like online job applications, is that you don't get to submit documents. You get like an online application process where the question appears and you get like a text box that you have to fill out. And so what you probably need to have done is written the Word document and copy the text across and then paste it into the box. But the way we've created our documentation is that you've been using the right heading. So when they ask you what your strategies are or your actions are or your measures are, that's what the global grant process is going to ask you. So you already have that all kind of lined up, and it makes it really easy to just copy and paste everything across. And so this is a tried and tested set of documentation that matches the global grants application process. So that might be a new and scary opportunity for Rotaractors, but hopefully if you use this documentation, it's a little less new and a little less scary. So let's do stop sharing again and present now again. I don't know if this is the best way to do it, but it's working for me. So there we go. Okay. So this is an example of one of our Excel templates already filled out for you. So for example, here was our goal to contribute to Landcare's efforts. So we wanted to plant 2,000 seedlings. That was our target. Our strategy was to work with Tree Project, which is an annoying name-wise, but they are called Tree Project when they provide seedlings, and Landcare. An action is that we had to order the seeds from them. Somebody had to buy them. We had to pick them up. We had to hold a sowing day. So working across this document, you can see how a goal, helping Landcare, bringing people together, providing a hands-on opportunity with an environmental focus, leads to sending out an email telling people what to bring the week before. So it's all planned out there for you. This is just an example one filled out. You can take it into even more detail with all those actions and tasks listed here with somebody's name next to them. Timing-wise, these green boxes is an attempt at a Gantt chart, which just shows you throughout the year when that task is happening. There's some monetary values put against things and any additional comments. Oh, I've done it again. Okay. And as you work your way through that document, there's also templates and worked examples for things like the monitoring and evaluation plan, which is where you track your measures as you go through the project, and also a budget as well. Whether you like Excel or not, I'm not particularly a fan of Excel all of the time, but it is really helpful in keeping your ideas all in one document, which you could put in a shared space, and then everyone who's working on your project can access those resources at the same time. So again, I'm going to stop presenting and start presenting again because it's working for me, and go back to the slides. Awesome. Okay, we're doing quite well time-wise. And at 45 minutes, does anyone have any questions? Feel free to post them in the chat. I know that that last section there, I just threw a lot of stuff at you. But again, we're recording this session, so you'll be able to come back to it. And we're also going to provide all the links to the resources. So later over the next couple of weeks, when you sit down and you go back to your club, you'll be able to pull out these resources when you need them. The takeaway I want you to take from this presentation is just that these resources are out there for you to use. So May, just tell me if there's any questions in the chat. Otherwise, we'll do a quick overview of the rest of Planning for Success, steps 3 to 5.
Yeah, no questions currently. Just Leonard has said that this is quite similar to the logical framework, so log frame used in international development projects. So I'm not familiar with that, but quite interesting.
Yeah, I am also not familiar with that particular scaffold, but as I showed at the start, a lot of planning has this kind of planned cycle and the documentation. I don't think that we're claiming that we're creating a new wheel, but I think a lot of Rotarians doing Rotary projects, and I'd include Rotaractors there as well, feel like they need to recreate the wheel every time they want to start a new project or take on a new endeavor. And so what we're providing with our worked examples and templates is that it's already there for you. You can just start to fill it in. And if it doesn't work for you, then you can adapt it as well. So I'm glad that people are starting to see some commonalities with other platforms and things that they've been using. So let's talk about steps 3 to 5. When it comes to implementation, you just got to do it. You're just doing and implementing the plans that you just created. So one of the plans was the way you're going to communicate with your stakeholders. So you assign the actions and the tasks to different people and make sure that that's happening. When it comes to implementation and with the doing, what we focused on in the chapter, this chapter in Planning for Success, is about what happens if things change or go wrong throughout the process. I can't remember if my friend Ben Hill is on the call, but now whenever I think about this, I always think about how he and his team put a lot of effort into creating the next Australian Rotaract conference on a cruise ship, and now cruise ships are venue non grata, and they've had to change their plans. So what if something changes? For our tree project, it's often been, what if it rains? For the Carteret Islanders, it's been, what if there's a change in leadership in the community and we're suddenly told that they have a different set of priorities? And so A Rotarian called Alan Colvin came up with this kind of idea of a project management diamond. I've heard people refer to it as other kind of shapes as well. But if you imagine that that diamond is a piece of string, and you suddenly pull on one of the areas because something has changed, like suddenly you have a lot less money or a lot more money, or your timeline is shorter, it's going to affect the overall shape of the diamond. And so there's other aspects that are going to be impacted. So if you want to maintain quality, but your budget has been slashed, maybe the timeline needs to be extended, or maybe you won't be able to provide as much of the item or as the thing you were going to do. So that means the scope has become shorter. So again, running through some what if scenarios before you go for activating your plans can be really good. You can create a bit of a fun club meeting out of it. And what you should be doing every time someone poses a what if is go back to the decisions and the plans that you already made and the overall mission and vision of your project, and just think about what would happen. And so then you'll have sort of backup ideas of what if your venue suddenly goes out of business. So you're like, okay, well, we know that we want to stick with the same dates. We'll go and find another venue. And we know we can reach out to our stakeholders to let them know what's happened. And you just start implementing all those plans that you have come up with. And then when it comes to monitoring and evaluation, which is step 4, we've got a few definitions here. So monitoring is collecting data as you go along and analyzing it to make sure that you're on track. And then evaluating is when you add in the judgment. So are things going well? Are things going the way you wanted them to? Would you consider that things are successful and effective, or do you need to change things? So it's about assessing the measures of how you're going. Could be how are our trees going. Monitoring would be checking in with our growers for the tree project and making sure that our plans to find a site are on time. Our evaluating might be, we got a different species of seeds this year and they really haven't germinated very well. It's making our growers feel like they're not doing a very good job, making them not love the project as much, and it means we're not going to get as many trees. So I don't think we're going to buy those kinds of seeds next year. And then reporting is about communicating. It could be throughout the project. So we might want to report to the land care holder exactly how many trees we think we're going to give for them. So then we know how many volunteer numbers we expect to have. Or it could be at the end where we report on the end results of what we've done in our project. And again, there's a template for that in the Planning for Success resources. I've added in this slide as well to really talk about how we should celebrate and report what we do. We can report officially, write it down, keep it in our club records, send it to our sponsor clubs. But we should also celebrate and also share our successes and our learnings with the Rotary family and beyond. So I'd really like to see more Rotaract projects being shared in things like district newsletters, community papers and radio, and also have a think about the types of awards that we have. I know as a person who has proposed Rotaract Australia awards before that you worry if anybody is ever going to apply, and the applications seem to take a really long time to come in. So if you do a really great project, put your hand up and get some recognition for it, and then share what worked really well for you so other people can do really great projects as well. I encourage you to make sure you share your successes and your learnings as well, because that can be really important. And then as we move into step 5, sustaining, we can reflect on our project using a SWOT. We kind of did that this morning with Beck about our clubs. That was the first step of the strategic planning process. You can review a project based on sustainable practices and principles to make it even more sustainable environmentally in the future. You could review the project management diamond. What if the scope suddenly got bigger? What would you do? And you could look at turning a project, a one-off entity, or maybe a yearly project that you do, into a program. There are many Rotary clubs that take on projects that get so big they become programs, and they end up being slightly separate from the club, but they are always inherently tied to that club because that's where they started, and they get bigger than just the club and they become their own program. Some examples of that would be things like Shelter Box in Victoria. So your project doesn't just have to stay with your club. It can get bigger and better and go places we never even expected. And so as we come to the end of our presentation, we have another chat question for you. How are you feeling about projects and project management now at the end of this session? So you don't have to quite exactly meet these sentences here, but if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, All right, but hopefully also feeling like you know what you can do and where you can go if you need the support. You're probably at A. If you're B, I need some time to digest all of this, but I think I can do this. We've got this little rotary engine that could on the right-hand side there. Or if you're feeling super empowered, bring it on, then you would be a C. So share A, B, C in the chat for us.
Getting quite a lot of Bs come through.
Awesome. Yeah, we've just thrown quite a lot of information at you, and it's been a big morning as well. So I encourage you to go and look at those resources online. Report back to your club about what you've learnt today, including sharing planning for success. So if you ever have a member who comes up with a project idea, quickly send them the quick project assessment document. Have a few printed out at your club venue ready to go if people bring you some ideas. Or if you have some newer members who are keen to start some projects, tell them about planning for success so they feel supported as they go through the process. And then we would love to hear if you use the 5 steps for your future projects. You can share on the Rotaract Australia Facebook page or within the Planning for Success section of our Sustainable Communities website. There is a forum. It's not very active at the moment because Rotarians don't really like forums, but maybe Rotaractors do. So jump in and share, especially if you take one of our resources and you adapt it in some way, because that's really what we'd like to show people, is that the templates are yours and they're yours to change up as much as you like, but we would love to hear about it. May, do you want to finish this off?
Yeah, so we also saw a few C's come through as well, which is really nice.
Awesome.
And yeah, so we've just had a question. So how will we be able to access this presentation and the PowerPoint after the sessions? So I'm just posting the link to the slides for you guys to access. And yeah, so thank you all for joining us today. It's been really good to see all your faces. And yeah, so those are our details there if you'd like to contact us for some more information, and hope you all have a good day. Though it is a long day, but yeah, hope it goes well.
Yeah, awesome. It looks like we've got 5 minutes. So if anyone has any more questions, feel free to chuck them in the chat, or have a quick break before we jump back into Rotaract. I think it's Q&A that's next. Yeah, but thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
Yep, so it's going into the Rotaract Australia session next.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, May. I've just posted into the chat a link to the next session. So the remaining sessions for today will be held in the main room. So you'll just need that one link. The next session will be on Rotaract Australia, and it will be starting at 2:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. It's a wonderful presentation, and I hope that you've all gotten a little something out of that to take back to your clubs.
Hi guys, so I just had a quick question. Ishwa, this one's actually for you, sorry. At the Rotaract Australia, the Australian Rotaract conference last year or was it earlier this year in the Gold Coast? I can't remember, time flies. But I think it did a similar presentation on projects. I was wondering how we might be able to get access to that presentation.
Sure. We'll make sure that a copy of the presentation and a link to the video will be shared with you once all of the materials from all of the presentations has been compiled. So that'll probably come out in about a week's time or so.
Okay, that's from the Australian Rotaract conference?
Yes, so it'll be all of the material from this training day, and as part of the project section, we'll make sure to share a link to the ARC presentation as well.
Great, lovely, no worries, thank you. And also thank you so much, Claire and May, that was really inspiring. I'm feeling like, it was like, this is a lot, but like, this is good. This is what I needed. So I think this was a really valuable presentation. So well done.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. It's really nice to hear. Yeah, all that stuff is there, guys, and feel free to reach out if you're like, oh, I remember there was a thing and I can't remember where it was now. Yeah, just please get in touch, because we're only here to help and make everyone's projects collectively better.